This is the Rabbi Shmuel Show, and we're talking with Ben Wildavsky, author of The Great Brain Race, published by Princeton University Press. Ben was telling us how his father, Aaron Wildavsky, one of the greatest political scientists of the 20th century, also spent time in Princeton University and Berkeley, and this man was a C student through Erasmus High School in Brooklyn. Now, albeit Erasmus High School was a great high school. A lot of brilliant people came out of there, but a C student, probably maybe wasn't good at math or something.
You know, I never got all the details, but he was an indifferent student, that's his own words. He blossomed at a Brooklyn College, which was, of course, a free place like many the city university schools. His parents were immigrants with no formal education to speak of beyond, middle school or high school. The reason I make that point is you asked about the value of college. So I think one of our great strengths is that we have a diverse system. There's many places you can go, many points of entry. You can mess up in high school, you can still recover. I have a friend, like me, had a useless degree in comparative literature, but he went back, he got a post-bac in all the sciences, he became a doctor. So this means that, yes, we have problems with hedonism, we have problems with students' behavior. I trace a lot of it back to the abandonment of what was called in loco parentis by colleges. Colleges used to take greater responsibility for really molding students in all ways, not just academically, but socially, you might say morally as well. They've really abandoned that, and in many cases, not all. And I think that has certainly created some problems, but I think that we're fortunate that students have many places they can go. If you want a single-sex dorm, if you want a milder campus environment, you can find it.
Yeshiva College, my alma mater,
I knew you'd mention that.
A beautiful place to go. And when Ben was at the U.S. News and World Report, Yeshiva College started scaling the heights when you were in charge of ranking
That's
it.
right.
I think they went up to 40. Yeah. After I graduated, I think they went down. I don't know exactly. But Ben, let's talk about that for a moment. There's a couple of issues which you've raised which really pushes my buttons. First of all, you're saying people can mess up in high school, and so therefore college is good. Well, hold on one second. The logic here is a little bit off. Instead of trying to make colleges better and graduate schools better, why don't we just make the high schools better? The high schools, it's like, okay, we're allowing the kids to mess up in high school because college is when we'll really teach them. Well, then why are we wasting 4 years? Because I don't know about you, but I'm planning on paying a lot of money for a high school, yeshiva, Jewish day school education. Why abandon those years? Why give up? If we make the high schools better, maybe then people can start working at a younger age and they could develop even more.
Well, look, it doesn't have to be either or. I quite agree. There's a lot of discussion in the world of education policy about the pipeline, going from kindergarten all the way through college graduation. So clearly there are many leaks in the pipeline, right? There's dropouts from high schools. There's inadequately prepared high school graduates. There's remedial education proliferating in colleges. There's lots of kids. We have a very high college going rate out of high school, but huge numbers don't make it through to their BA. So absolutely, the reason I talk about open entrance is simply as an illustration that we're a land of second opportunities. I don't want to lose that.
Oh, but wait one second. If we're talking about open entrance and second opportunities, when you're talking about the difference between a BA and a high school degree, let's be honest. Are you looking at all the universities? What's the difference between a Princeton degree or a Yale degree or a Columbia degree? How much is that worth versus a degree from the Hicksville College of nowhere and no place? Does that really worth anything? And and let's talk about the cost. How much does it even cost to go to a university anymore? Hey, they're saying $50,000 a year. Let's take our city, just our city, GW University. How much do you think that would cost for 1 year?
Yeah, GW with tuition, room, and board. I don't have the figures at my fingertips, but I'm sure it's somewhere in the $47,000 to $52,000 a year range. That's what most of the top privates are.
And that's before you start paying for the beer, because we know these students have to pay for the beer. So $50,000 a year. That's times $200,000.
Yeah, don't remind
you
me.
could get a degree online, and in that time start working, develop your business, and get a head start on everybody else.
That's true.
And what about the land of opportunity? If your father would have had to pay for Brooklyn College, we wouldn't be such a worse world without the Aaron Wildavsky contribution. So what about the rising costs? And aren't these for-profit businesses? And yet they're getting all these tax breaks?
Well, look, you've raised many, many questions. I'll try to just start with a few. First of all, we should bear in mind, most students do not go to the GWs and the Yales and Harvards of the world, right? 80% of students in this country go to public, relatively open access universities that are heavily subsidized. So it's not typical at all to be paying $50,000 a year.
How much is typical?
You know, the College Board does an annual report on this, and I believe, again...
We could Google this right now. If you're watching it, you'll get the answer
from
quicker.
memory. Of course, publics are much lower, but I think it's something around, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 for public institutions. That's not including room and board. And for privates, you get closer to, I think, high 20s or maybe low 30s, because most privates are not as expensive as the elites. Look,
but would you want your children? Would you want your children going to one of those schools, or do you want them going to the elites?
I think that you have to find the right fit for every child. And I think that's a big mistake that we sometimes fall into in a place like Washington and these sort of affluent suburbs, or the affluent parts of the city that my kid's got to go to one of the top 10 schools.
Not my kid. I want my children going to Yeshiva College. That's where I went, and that's where I want them going. Or else they can maybe study at an online college, which is a very good place. A lot of people are doing that now, going to online universities and then studying the Talmud all day. There's nothing wrong with that, is there?
There's great variation in both the conventional sector and the online sector. There's some high-quality online stuff out there. It tends to be more vocational, more career-oriented. That's not for everybody. If you want to study Thucydides, arguably you're going to want to do that in a small seminar with a small group of people. I don't think that's true for everyone. But, what I get into in the book, taking this globally...
Through who? You said
Thucydides.
I know, I'm just teasing you. All right, I was just joking. I had you. Ben, do they have medical schools and law schools online?
I'm aware of a place called, I think it's Concord University. There's an online law school, but they get into big problems because there's essentially a cartel through the ABA, the American Bar Association. They make it very hard for anybody new to get in. I'm not sure about online medical schools.
That would break this whole paradigm. If you started having the online medical schools, law schools, and then people could just skip the whole process. Because if they're just going to college to get into medical school and law school, and then you don't really need to do that, this could be a whole new world out there.
Yeah, but the whole online dissection thing, I'm not sure if I'm down with that. I don't know if I want to be operated on by somebody who's played operation,
First of all, you don't even know who's operating on you. And when you're going to be operated on, you don't have a choice. You're getting operated on now by people right 3 months out of college, out of medical school. And what's to say that you can't do it through technology, that through the lasers, etc. The online medical school may be something that you should cover in your next book.
Great idea.
Yeah. Now, let's go for a minute, Ben, because this is something that I know there's so much we're touching on, and we want to get into everything, but I'm trying to tell you all of these issues will be discussed in this book, The Great Brain Race. You need to buy this book. Ben, I want to ask you about charter schools, and specifically as it relates to Jewish day schools and yeshivot. Do you think that there is a viable option out there in the future for the Jewish day school model to switch to charter schools?
It's a very tough question, Shmuel. I thought about this. We've talked about this a little bit. Charter schools, are independently run public schools. That's an important distinction. People don't always remember. They're public schools. And they are, I think it's been a tremendous innovation in reform of public schools in the last decade, the last 20 years. That said, they offer a lot of flexibility. There's wide variety and quality. That's acknowledged by everybody in the movement. And there are restrictions on how they can educate kids. And, of course, every state is a little bit different in its rules about church and state. The Supreme Court has upheld school vouchers in Cleveland, in Ohio, where they actually can be used for any kind of school, including religious schools. But with charters, it's not certain that you can do that legally. Now, let me just quickly try to answer the rest of your question.
Well, you know what? Let's wait for the next clip. We'll get into that because we're running out of time here. YouTube, until we get 1 million hits, YouTube is not going to let us go over 10 minutes. So please, let's get 1 million hits, and then we won't have to cut the interviews in the middle. But we'll pick this up on clip number 3.